How much baking powder do I need to substitute for yeast in pizza dough?
Hey there, pizza lovers! Welcome to another delicious video. Today, we're going to talk about a common question. How much baking powder do you need to substitute for yeast in pizza dough? Whether you're out of yeast or simply prefer a quicker rise, we've got you covered. Let's dive in.
Understanding the difference.
Before we jump into the substitution process, it's important to understand the difference between yeast and baking powder. Yeast is a live organism that feeds on sugars, producing carbon dioxide gas, which causes dough to rise. On the other hand, baking powder is a chemical leavening agent that consists of a combination of baking soda, cream of tartar, and sometimes cornstarch.
Substituting baking powder for yeast.
When it comes to substituting baking powder for yeast in pizza dough, there's a general guideline to follow. For every 1 teaspoon of yeast, you can use 1.5 to 2 teaspoons of baking powder as a replacement. This should give you a comparable rise and texture in your dough.
Adjusting the recipe.
To adjust your pizza dough recipe when using baking powder instead of yeast, you'll need to make a few changes. First, reduce the amount of liquid in the recipe. Since yeast requires time to activate and produce gas, it needs a wetter dough. Baking powder, on the other hand, reacts quickly, so a slightly drier dough is preferred. Start by reducing the liquid by 10 to 20% and adjust as needed to achieve the right consistency. Additionally, decrease the rise time. Yeast doughs usually require a longer proofing period to allow the yeast to work its magic. When using baking powder, you won't need as much time. Reduce the rise time by approximately half compared to a yeast-based dough. Keep an eye on the dough and wait until it has visibly risen.
Tips for using baking powder in pizza dough.
Here are a few extra tips to ensure success when using baking powder as a yeast substitute in your pizza dough. 1. Mix the dry ingredients thoroughly. Baking powder tends to clump, so make sure it's evenly distributed throughout the dry ingredients. 2. Use fresh baking powder. Check the expiration date on your baking powder to ensure it's still active. Expired baking powder may not give you the desired rise. 3. Work quickly. Baking powder starts reacting as soon as it comes into contact with liquid. Once you add the liquid to the dough, work efficiently to shape the pizza before the rising action subsides. And there you have it, pizza enthusiasts. You now know how to substitute baking powder for yeast in your pizza dough. Remember, for every teaspoon of yeast, you can use 1.5 to 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Adjust the recipe by reducing the liquid and decreasing the rise time. Don't forget the tips we mentioned for optimal results. Now go ahead, get creative with your toppings, and enjoy a delicious homemade pizza in no time. Happy baking!